A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
When is the latest time one may say Kriat Shema in the morning?
In the Mishnah, we find two opinions. Rabbi Eliezer says that one must recite the Shema in the morning by sunrise. That is the last time that one may say Shema in the morning. According to Rabbi Yoshua, one may say Shema ad shalosh sha'oth. That is to say, until the end of the third hour of the day. And we will explain what that means in a moment. And Rabbi Yoshua goes on to say, why do I say this? Because sheken derech bnei melachim la'amod b'shalosh sha'oth. Because it is the habit of bnei melachim, the sons of kings, princes, that is to say, aristocrats who have no work, no job to go to, who are not required to be anywhere at a particular time, and therefore lead a life of leisure. They usually stay up late and they get up late. Such people tend to get up. So it was the case in the time of Rabbi Yoshua at the end of the third hour of the day. And therefore Rabbi Yoshua said that is the latest time for saying Shema for every person who has not said Shema sooner. It is clear that Rabbi Yoshua does not mean to say that one should wait till that time, but rather that is the latest that one can possibly read the Shema and perform the Miswah of Kriat Shema. That is fact number one. Here we have to add another point as a basic point of reference in this discussion, and that is that when the Mishnah speaks of shalosha, or 3 hours of the day, or 4 hours of the day, what it refers to is a day that is divided into 12 equal parts, each part being called an hour. In Hebrew, in halachic terms, this is called a sha'a zmanith, a relative hour. It is relative because it is 1/12 of the day being from sunrise to sunset, which of course varies. The length of the day varies with the season. So in the winter, the length of the day may be 10 hours, and in the summer, the length of the day may be 14 hours, for example. And in other, depending on one's location, geographic location, the day in the summer can be longer, and the day in the winter can be shorter. And therefore each 12th part of that day is also either longer or shorter. So a halachic hour, a sha'az zamanith, can be in the winter, shall we say, 50 minutes, and in the summer 70 minutes. And again, this could be more or less depending on the location. This is, of course, what is meant also by telling the time by a sundial. A sundial does exactly the same thing. It divides the day into relative parts based on the shade cast by the sky, the sun shining in the sky. And this is how time was measured in Roman times, Greco-Roman times, and this is the period of the Mishnah. And this was therefore the common way of describing the hour, the point of the day. So when one said the end of 3 hours of the day, ad shalosh sha'oth, one was really saying until the end of the first quarter of the day. If one said that the time for doing such and such, or I will meet you at the end of 4 hours, that means I will meet you at the conclusion of the first third of the day. Again, the day being measured from sunrise to sunset, because that of course is when the sun shines and when a sundial can be of some use. When the sun is not shining, a sundial of course is worthless. That is point number two. The third point to understand and to internalize is that these two positions, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, are representing two ancient schools of thought. Rabbi Eliezer, generally speaking, follows the teachings and the halachic thinking of Beth Shammai. And it was apparently the standard teaching in earlier periods, before the time of these Chachamim, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, that one has to complete the reading of the Shema by sunrise. That is the view of Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah, Ad Nesahama. Whereas Rabbi Yoshua generally represents the teachings of Beth Hillel. Beth Hillel were in fact innovative and reinterpreted many halachot based on new realities or based on what was common and standard amongst the average person. Whereas many of the opinions of Beth Shammai often reflected the realities amongst the upper classes, the aristocracy within Jewish society. And in this case too, we see that Rabbi Eliezer adopts the position, again probably based on the teachings of Beth Shammai, that one has to recite Shema by the time that a majority of people have risen. We're talking here about the Shema in the morning. So if it was the case in those days that people did not live by the kinds of clocks and watches that we have today, such watches and clocks did not exist. People lived according to the rising of the sun, the dark and the light, the natural rhythms of life. So Rabbi Eliezer says, if it is the fact that most people are awake and have said the Shema by sunrise, that is the time that the last possible time for saying Shema for all people. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer is of the view that we follow the practice and the reality of most people. We do not take into account the habits of a small, pampered minority of people, a very, very small percentage of the populace, the Bnei Melachim, the princes, the aristocracy, who get up much later than most people. We look at the reality for the vast majority of people. So if 95% of the populace is up and about by sunrise, that is the last possible time for saying Shema, because in the morning one has to say Shema in the time referred to in the Torah as Uvkumecha, the time of rising, when people tend to get up. And this is also, by the way, the view of Rabbi Eliezer with regards to reciting Shema in the evening. The last time for reciting Shema in the evening is by the end of the first watch, which is to say by the end of the first third of the night. This is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in the first Mishnah of Masechet Berachot. And here the reasoning is exactly the same. Most people have gone to sleep, as Rashi explains on that Mishnah, and in the Gemara, which discusses that Mishnah, most people have gone to sleep by that time. So it was in those days. I don't think it's true nowadays, but it was in those days. People did not have electricity. People tended to go to sleep early and rise early. And that was the reality. So Rabbi Eliezer says, if 95% of people, or even 90%, or even 85% of people have gone to sleep by the end of the first third of the night, and if we're talking about a theoretical night of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., shall we say, sunrise, sunset going to through to sunrise, that means by 10 p.m. If most people are asleep by 10 p.m., that's the first third of the night, then that is the last time for saying Shema, because all such things, when discussing Uvkumecha or Uvshochbecha, when people tend to rise or when people tend to go to sleep, we look at the majority of people. Rabbi Yoshua, on the other hand, and the Halacha, one should mention here, is according to Rabbi Yoshua with regards to the reading of Shema in the morning. Rabbi Yoshua says we can and should, where necessary, in other words, when a person has got up very late, we can and should tell a person, you may say Shema, even if it's much, much later than the time that the vast majority of people rise in the morning, because there is a certain class of people, not just one or two unusual individuals or people who are sick or people who suffer from some issue or disease or condition, but there is a certain social class of people who get up much later than others, and even though they are a very small percentage of the population, they do represent a certain living reality. They are part of the world in which we live, and these people get up much later. And in the days of Rabbi Yoshua, that time was the end of the third hour. By that time, even the aristocracy, even the late risers, the pampered, wealthy, spoilt young men of the aristocratic classes, they would have got up by that time of day. And therefore Rabbi Yoshua said that is the last time for saying Shema, not just for the Bnei Melachim, not just for those who habitually rise at such a time, but for all people. Not because that's the ideal time to say Shema, but that is also a time when one may say Shema and still perform the Miswah, because there is a category of persons who rise at that time. The same is also true, by the way, for the reciting of the Shema in the evening. There, in the first Mishnah of Masechet Berachot, it does not mention Rabbi Yehoshua, but it mentions another view which follows the opinion of Beth Hillel, which is Rabban Gamliel, and also the Chachamim, at least according to the Talmud Bavli's interpretation of the Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel says, seeing that some people go to sleep for different reasons, regularly, very late, that is to say just before dawn, and maybe they get up later, or maybe they sleep a very short time, whatever the case may be, maybe they work at night, whatever the case may be, seeing that there are people who habitually go to sleep at the very end of the night, one may say Shema, in the evening Shema, all the way till just up to dawn. And by the same logic, Rabbi Yehoshua says, seeing that there is a certain category of persons who rise very late in the morning, one may say Shema up to that time, not just for those people, but for all people. In other words, the Halacha is the same Halacha for all individuals, but we do take into account even a small fringe element of society. The question is, how are we to apply this Halacha in the present day? Because we know that based on the calculations of the Mishnah of Shalosh Sha'ot, the end of the third hour, the end of the first quarter of the daylight hours, then very often that time works out to be 8 o'clock or 7:30 or 8:30 or even 9 o'clock, depending on the season, depending on one's location. But a relatively early time is the last time for saying the Shema, according to this wording, to this statement of the Mishnah. But we also know, on the other hand, that there are categories of people in society at the present time who habitually get up much later than that time. That they tend to get up at 10 and perhaps even 11 o'clock. There are those, no doubt, who get up even in the mid-afternoon, but one couldn't possibly stretch the concept of uvkumecha at the time when people generally get up to include the mid or late afternoon. So we have to look at the time when a certain category of people, those perhaps who tend to work at very late hours, and then those who perhaps start work much later than others and work into the night, or people on shift work perhaps, or other types of categories of individuals in society who tend to regularly get up at a later time, not simply because they are layabouts, but because that is their schedule, that is the work that they have, that is the job that they have found, and these are the hours they have to keep. Based on this, we can claim today, very reasonably, that the Bnei Melachim of today are those people who get up regularly at a much later time, perhaps as late as 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and that would be the Bnei Melachim of today, similar to the Bnei Melachim of the time of Rabbi Yehoshua, almost 2,000 years ago. In other words, today one can make a very powerful case, I believe, that seeing that the essential logic, the underlying reasoning of Rabbi Yehoshua, based on the thinking of Beth Hillel, that when we speak about Sha'a Shederech Bnei Adam Omadim, the time when people tend to get up, includes not only the majority of people, but even a small but nevertheless recognizable and noticeable minority of the population, seeing that is the underlying reasoning for this Psak Halacha, today the time would have to be considered to be later than the time that one finds in most calendars and most books of Halacha that address this issue. We're not suggesting that a person should always get up late, or this is an excuse for always sleeping in, but it is important that people know if for whatever reason a person tends to get up later or if a person was feeling unwell, or a person happened to go to sleep very late and got up later than usual, or for whatever reason a person finds himself rising later than the time considered to be the usual time for saying the Shema, the last possible time for saying the Shema, it is important that a person know that he can still perform the Miswah, and that he's required to do so, and he must do so, and he should not do so feeling that really he has missed the time, that he is a great sinner, because it is very detrimental to a person's spiritual well-being to believe that he is sinning and doing the wrong thing when in fact he is not doing so. This is something that Rav Kook points out in a number of places. And basic common sense and simple understanding of the human psyche will confirm this. And therefore it is important for people today to know, I believe, that even if a person has gotten up later than most people get up, even if a person has risen later than the time that appears on the calendar as the last time for saying the Shema, if a person can say Shema up till approximately, shall we say, 11 a.m., one is still performing the Miswah, and one should make every effort to do so.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.